So what if I told you that the most ruthless, effective business strategist you could hire this year isn't actually a person at all?
Right, which sounds like a hook, but it's literally where we are right now.
Exactly. I mean, what if your absolute best operations manager is actually, two rival artificial intelligence models just locked inside a developer's code editor, relentlessly arguing with each other until they figure out exactly how to run your business?
It's a completely wild concept to wrap your head around.
It really is. And welcome to our discussion. Today, we are tearing apart the 24th issue of the Thinking in Public Substack newsletter created by Alperin.
Yeah, and the material in this one is just, well, it's dense, but in the best way possible.
Real, for sure. Our mission for this comprehensive breakdown is to examine an entirely automated AI operation system that runs complex daily business tasks entirely in the background. Like, we are looking at a system that fundamentally changes what it means to manage a company.
It really redefines the whole concept of management.
Right. So whether you are actively trying to scale a massive enterprise or you're simply, a professional desperately trying to escape an overflowing inbox, the source material we have today offers a radically different, highly efficient way to handle digital work.
A way that actually works with you, not against you.
Yes, exactly. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the severe limitations of how almost everyone is currently using AI. Because before we talk about what these agents are actually doing, we have to talk about the environment where they operate.
Yeah, because the environment dictates, well, literally everything about the output.
Right.
And the standard setup most professionals use today is, honestly, it's fundamentally broken. It actively penalizes complex
Oh,
workflows.
totally. I call it the browser tab trap. You know this feeling intimately. You open up your browser. In tab A, you have a chat session open with an AI model to draft an email to a client.
Classic setup.
Right. And then in tab B, you have another session open to analyze a spreadsheet of sales data. But tab B has absolutely no idea what is happening in tab A.
None at all.
They suffer from complete localized amnesia.
Yeah, and it creates a tremendous amount of cognitive overhead for the human user. I mean, every single browser tab represents an isolated session. The context simply does not carry over.
You're just starting from scratch every time.
Exactly. You basically become a human API. You end up doing all this tedious manual labor of copying text from one window, pasting it into another, constantly re-explaining your business goals to the model.
Which is so frustrating.
It is, and you're just trying to keep track of a completely fragmented workflow.
You essentially turn into a middleman between your own tools. Instead of the technology giving you leverage, you are just managing a dozen amnesiac assistants.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But the source material presents a completely different architecture.
Hmm.
Instead of relying on a web browser, this setup takes multiple AI agents, specifically Claude Code and Codex, and runs them inside a single unified environment. Visual Studio Code, which is widely known as VS Code.
Right, a developer environment?
Yeah. And the folder structure inside that software maps directly to actual business operations. Like, there are specific folders for outreach, content, strategy, and meetings.
Which completely flips the script on how we organize files.
Exactly. To put it in perspective, using standard browser tabs is like having a bunch of brilliant employees, but you've locked them all in separate soundproof rooms.
Right.
They cannot communicate. You are left frantically running down the hallway, sliding notes under the doors to convey messages between them.
What's fascinating here is that moving them into VS Code completely dismantles those soundproof rooms. It is the equivalent of putting all those brilliant minds into one high-tech boardroom where all the data is just laid out on the table.
Oh, I love that image.
Everything happens in parallel, and it all happens in plain sight. This is a massive psychological and operational shift. You transition from manual context management, where you are the primary bottleneck, to true parallel processing.
So they're all working at the same time.
Exactly. In that single environment, you can have one agent actively researching leads in your outreach folder, while another agent is simultaneously drafting social media copy in your content folder.
And they share a unified memory state, right? Like, the
Yeah.
content agent can look over at the outreach agent's work and actually tailor the social media messaging to match the specific leads being targeted that day.
Yes, exactly.
You're finally letting the assistants talk to each other and see the whole board. But A boardroom is completely useless if the people inside it can only talk to themselves.
Right, they need to actually do things.
Exactly. How are these models actually reaching out and interacting with the real world? Because this is where the source material completely flips expectations regarding the actual software being used.
Yeah, because the choice of agents here is highly unconventional for standard business operations.
Well, no, Claude Code and Codex are traditionally developer tools.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the marketing materials or the primary user base, these are platforms built for managing code repositories, debugging scripts, and, well, writing software applications.
They're built for engineers.
Right. Yet, in this specific setup for managing a business operations company called The Brutally Honest, these developer tools are executing zero product development. No software is being written.
None at all.
Instead, they have been completely hijacked to manage marketing, sales, and administration.
Yeah, the operators are leveraging developer-grade infrastructure directed at a completely different purpose. And the level of integration is profound because the user almost never opens their external applications manually anymore.
Okay, so the source outlines the exact tech stack these agents manipulate. They connect to Instantly to run complex cold email campaigns. They connect to Instagram and LinkedIn for content creation and direct publishing.
Right.
They link up with Fathom to process meeting notes, and they tie directly into HubSpot to update the CRM. You simply tell the agent what you need, like maybe it's a comprehensive LinkedIn performance review for the month, and it quietly processes the request in the background.
Which sounds like magic to most people.
It does, and honestly, I need to stop you there and push back on the feasibility of this, because you are describing a system where complex developer tools are driving API calls across multiple platforms. People just assume you need a computer science degree to make this architecture function.
And that assumption is the most persistent myth holding businesses back today. Honestly, it is a technical barrier the source material explicitly dismantles. Setting this up does not require a software engineering background.
I mean, I'm genuinely skeptical. How does a regular marketing manager actually connect a developer tool to HubSpot without writing custom integration code?
Because the models utilize direct connectors and standardized protocols. For many popular applications, it's just a simple authentication process.
Okay.
And for anything outside of those native lists, the system uses something called MCP, the Model Context Protocol, or simple command line interfaces.
Wait, command line interfaces?
Yeah.
CLI. That makes absolutely no sense for a non-technical user. I mean, the command line is notoriously unforgiving. If I type a single stray character or forget a semicolon, the terminal throws an error and nothing works.
Oh, I know.
How is a standard business operator supposed to run a company through a black terminal window?
Because the human operator isn't the one typing the commands. The AI is.
Oh.
Yeah. When you need to establish a new connection, you just tell Claude Code what you want to achieve in plain English. The AI acts as your personal IT support. It writes the terminal commands, it executes them, it reads the error messages if something goes wrong, and it fixes its own syntax.
That's wild.
The AI handles the unforgiving nature of the CLI entirely invisibly. And regarding MCP, think of the Model Context Protocol like a universal power adapter for AI.
Okay.
Historically, if an AI needed to talk to your local files or a specific software, a developer had to write a bespoke integration.
Yeah.
MCP standardizes that entire communication layer.
So the AI builds its own bridges to the software it needs to use. I am just amazed at how non-technical users can wield this level of computing power. You have regular business operators hijacking potent developer tools. Why do you think major AI companies are underestimating how regular users will repurpose these highly technical platforms?
Honestly, it comes down to a fundamental lack of imagination regarding user friction. AI companies build developer environments assuming the end goal is always the creation of new software.
Right, they put people in boxes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But business users do not care about categories. They just want leverage. A marketing director does not care if a tool is labeled for developers, if it is the only platform that allows them to run 5 parallel marketing campaigns seamlessly without clicking through 10 different web interfaces.
They just want the job done.
Yes. Users will always gravitate toward the path of least resistance. Right now, hijacking a developer environment provides the most frictionless, unified operational experience available on the market.
That concept of friction is fascinating, especially because it leads us into the most mind-bending part of this entire operational setup.
Oh, the multi-agent stuff.
Yeah. We've established how the system automates cold emails, handles CRM updates, and publishes content. That is impressive task automation. But running a business requires complex strategic decisions. An AI drafting an email is one thing, an AI deciding who to email and why is entirely different.
That's a whole different level of cognition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier there is a folder in this workspace dedicated exclusively to meetings.
This specific folder represents the leap from basic task execution into the realm of multi-agent debate. It is a completely different tier of cognitive architecture.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's walk through the actual life cycle of a task here. According to the source, when a situation requires real strategic thinking, say deciding on the angle for a controversial new marketing campaign, the user opens Claude Code and gives it the core topic.
Okay.
Then the user explicitly instructs Claude that Codex will be joining the session. You ask both models to work through the strategic problem together until they reach a definitive conclusion. And then the human user literally steps back from the keyboard.
You just let them loose.
Yeah. The models run the session entirely autonomously. They build on each other's thinking, they aggressively push back on each other's reasoning, and they iterate until a finalized strategy is written into the folder. The only time the human ever intervenes is if the session times out or stops prematurely, simply to prompt them to continue.
The underlying mechanics of why this produces superior results are rooted in the known limitations of individual neural networks. I mean, why force two differently trained models to interact, to engineer intentional friction?
Which is such an incredible irony. We have spent the last 15 years trying to remove every ounce of friction from our technology. We built one-click checkouts, biometric logins, infinite scrolling feeds.
Everything is supposed to be seamless.
Right. Everything is designed to be utterly frictionless. Yet to achieve the most human-like, high-level critical thinking, you literally have to lock two distinct algorithms in a text file and force them into a conflict.
Well, consider the alternative. If left entirely alone, a single AI model exhibits a known flaw. It tends to blindly follow its very first line of thinking.
It just anchors to the first idea.
Exactly. It goes deep into that initial premise and stays highly consistent, but there's zero pressure on its logic from the outside. It becomes a sycophant to its own initial assumptions. If you ask it for a marketing strategy, and its first thought is to focus on cost saving, it will generate 100 pages justifying why cost saving is the best angle.
But when you introduce Codex into the environment, the dynamic changes entirely. Claude takes a position, and Codex is forced to respond to it.
Right.
Codex might analyze the HubSpot data and counter-argue that the target demographic actually values time saving over cost saving. That response puts immense pressure on Claude's initial logic.
The reasoning gets rigorously stress-tested.
Yes, before a final strategic output ever lands in front of the human operator. And because Claude and Codex were built by different organizations with different training data, their disagreements are genuine. They approach complex problems from fundamentally different baseline perspectives.
And this architecture is not just an experimental workflow cooked up by a hobbyist in their basement. The PwC 2026 AI predictions, which are heavily referenced in the wider industry right now, specifically recommend this exact multi-model architecture.
Wow.
Yeah. PwC advises enterprise clients to use agents from entirely different model providers to check each other's work, especially in higher-stakes operational scenarios. The friction is a feature, not a bug.
That's a huge endorsement.
It is.
Yeah.
This raises an important question, though. Is engineered AI friction actually more reliable for strategic decision-making than human collaboration?
That is a massive question. I mean, I think about the dynamics of a standard corporate strategy meeting.
Right. Analyze human collaboration in that setting. A corporate meeting is heavily hindered by echo chambers, a desire to conform to the loudest voice in the room, and, pervasive workplace politics.
Oh, absolutely.
A junior analyst will almost always hold back a valid critique of a strategy simply to avoid offending a senior vice president.
But Claude and Codex do not have egos to protect. They do not care about office politics, and they certainly are not worried about getting fired or missing out on a promotion.
They literally can't care.
Right. They simply attack the structural logic of the argument relentlessly until the optimal solution is found. You strip away the social anxiety, the posturing, and the hesitation, and you are left with pure, unadulterated critical thinking.
It's a very pure form of problem solving.
It is. So once they reach a consensus, how does that text file actually become a tangible business action?
The execution phase is completely seamless. Once the debate concludes and the strategy is finalized in the document, one of the agents takes that agreed-upon text, utilizes the direct connector we discussed earlier, formats the data according to the specific platform's best practices, and executes the API call to publish it live or send the campaign.
So no human involvement at all.
None. The human operator never opened a web browser, never logged into the platform, and never clicked a publish button.
It is entirely self-contained, and that brings us to the macroeconomic reality of what we are discussing, because what we are detailing here is not some science fiction concept sketched out on a whiteboard for deployment a decade from now.
No, it is happening actively today, and it is scaling at a speed that is difficult for traditional institutions to even process.
Right, because today is June 10th, 2026. We must ground this entire discussion in our immediate reality by looking at the Gartner timeline for the future of agentic AI in enterprise applications, which the source material heavily highlights.
The numbers are wild.
The data points here are frankly staggering.
The velocity of enterprise adoption is honestly the most critical metric for any business leader to watch right now.
Gartner predicts that by the end of this current year, 2026, 40% of all enterprise applications will be integrated with task-specific AI agents. 40%.
It's a massive jump.
Just to put the sheer violence of that curve into perspective, in 2025, that number was sitting at less than 5%. We are living through an explosive, unprecedented integration phase at this exact moment.
And this year is merely the foundational layer. If you look at the Gartner timeline, it maps out a very clear, highly aggressive progression over the next 37 months.
Okay, lay it out for us.
In 2027, the infrastructure moves beyond single, isolated, task-specific agents into collaborative AI agents natively embedded within applications. That means multiple agents, each possessing diverse specialized skills, teaming up natively inside your corporate data environment.
So it takes the Claude and Codex boardroom setup we just analyzed, but instead of a user hacking it together in a developer tool, it becomes the native architecture of the software you just buy off the shelf.
Precisely. The software itself becomes the boardroom. Then, by 2028, the timeline predicts the formation of agentic ecosystems operating across multiple independent applications.
Okay, give me a practical example of how an ecosystem works across applications. Like, what does that actually look like?
Sure. An ecosystem means an agent monitoring your Google Analytics notices a sudden drop in regional website traffic. Without human prompting, it automatically communicates with the marketing agent to adjust ad spend allocations in your Facebook ads account, while simultaneously notifying your finance agent in QuickBooks to adjust the quarterly revenue projections.
It's doing all of that on its own.
Yes. It is a cascading sequence of autonomous actions across completely different software platforms. Finally, by 2029, the timeline suggests we hit a new normal where specialized agents are created on the fly by human operators collaborating in entirely novel ways.
Wow.
Over time, these agents build a deep contextual understanding of a business. They learn the nuances of the brand voice, the specific operational workflows, and the long-term strategic priorities.
The applications themselves cease to be destinations for humans. They just become the invisible background plumbing that these AI agents move through to get things done, which has massive, terrifying implications for anyone building software right now.
Oh, it completely rewrites the product development mandate. If we connect this to the bigger picture, for any founders, engineers, or product managers listening to this analysis, the single most critical question you must ask yourself about your product today is this: can an AI agent actually use what you are building?
Right. Does your software have an accessible API? Can a model like Claude Code connect to your platform, take meaningful action inside it, and extract value from it without a human being sitting at a desk moving a mouse?
If your software requires a human user to point and click on a screen to derive value, you are building infrastructure for the past.
It's obsolete before it ships.
Exactly. The products that will dominate the market in the late 2020s are the ones being engineered right now with the explicit foundational understanding that their primary end user will be an AI agent, not a human being. The protocols work today. The macroeconomic shift is already underway.
Let's pull all of these threads together. We have covered a massive amount of conceptual and technical ground today. We started by looking at the urgent need to escape the isolated, messy browser tab trap.
Yeah. Amnesia problem.
Right. We examined how moving operations into a unified environment like VS Code solves the problem of localized amnesia, allowing for true parallel processing. We explored the incredibly ingenious strategy of repurposing developer tools, specifically Claude Code and Codex, to execute daily business tasks without the operator needing a computer science degree, thanks to protocols like MCP and the AI managing its own command line interfaces.
Acting as its own IT support.
Exactly. We deeply unpacked the mechanics of the meetings folder, realizing that artificially engineering friction between two distinct models produces rigorously tested reasoning that strips away the ego and politics of human collaboration.
Engineered friction.
Yes. And finally, we grounded all of this theory in the undeniable reality of 2026, where 40% of enterprise apps are actively integrating these agents, propelling us toward a fully automated, cross-platform ecosystem by 2028.
So what does this all mean for you?
That's the big question. It means the fundamental way you think about your daily digital workflow has to change immediately. Professional value is no longer determined by how fast you can type, how many applications you can juggle, or how quickly you can clear an inbox. Your value is now determined by how effectively you can orchestrate and direct the autonomous agents that do that labor for you.
And, the implications of that shift lead to a rather profound realization about the future of technology itself. If founders and engineers must build software specifically designed to be operated by AI agents running entirely in the background without a human in the loop, we must ask, are we nearing the end of the graphical user interface?
Wait, the end of the GUI? That is a massive paradigm shift.
It really is. Think about the underlying logic. We have spent the last 40 years optimizing how software looks for human eyes.
Right, the UI design.
Exactly. We debate font choices, color palettes, drop shadows, and the exact placement of colorful buttons on dashboards to make the experience visually pleasing and intuitive for a human clicking a mouse.
Because humans need visual cues.
Yes. But if the primary end user of a piece of software is increasingly an AI model communicating via a text-based API, all of those visual elements become completely irrelevant.
Oh, wow.
An API does not care about drop shadows.
No, it really doesn't.
If the agents are doing the driving, the entire visual layer of modern software becomes unnecessary computational overhead. It fundamentally alters our physical and visual relationship with the digital world. The screens and dashboards we obsess over today might soon be viewed as archaic relics of a time when humans still had to do the heavy lifting themselves.
That is an incredible, unsettling thought to end on. If the operational system is working perfectly in the background, you never need to see the machinery moving at all. Thank you so much for joining us for this focus session. Take a moment later today to look at the screens, the interfaces, and the colorful dashboards you interact with. Ask yourself how many of them will even need to exist 3 years from now when an agent takes over your workflow. Until next time, keep questioning the systems around you.